Dear students, so let me start with the today's session in connection with the cutting fluids. So in that we are going to discuss about definition and explanation of cutting fluids, advantages of using cutting fluids, function or purpose of cutting fluids, properties of cutting fluids, types of cutting fluids and coolants, and the last concept that we are going to discuss in the today's session is application of cutting fluids. So before I proceed with the today's session, just I wanted to revise that we know one important thing here, that whenever we want to carry out the metal cutting operation, it is very important that the temperature at the tool chip interface should be maintained very low, because if the temperature is getting increased as the machining operation is in progress, then there is a formation of built-up edge or a false edge, and the cutting edge of the cutting tool will start wearing out very faster. And all these concepts we have already discussed in the previous session, that is in connection with the tool wear, reasons for tool wear, factors on which the tool wear depends, types of tool wear, how to minimize the tool wear and effects of tool wear, and the meaning of tool life, and the most important equation that is called as what? Taylor's tool life equation, how the tool life is related to the cutting speed or vice versa, or how the cutting speed is going to affect the tool life as far as its efficiency and as far as its cutting conditions are concerned. So now in the today's session we shall start with the cutting fluids. So this particular fluid is going to play a very major role in the process of machining. In a modern workshop or any manufacturing industry, okay, an enormous amount of power is lost either by generation of heat or by friction between the tool and workpiece. Just I have told that whenever there is a machining operation, there is a generation of heat due to friction between the tool and workpiece, because the tool is going to cut the workpiece, and definitely there is a friction. Due to friction there is a lot of amount of heat that is generated. Heat in the cutting process is generated by plastic deformation. This is very, very important. There are two types of deformations, that is what we can say, one is called as the elastic deformation and the next one is called as the plastic deformation. In the plastic deformation there is a complete sharing of a workpiece. The material will reach the position of cutting where a particular shape can be given, and by the chip tool friction and the amount of power lost due to the generation of heat varies from 20 to 30%, and hence to reduce it the use of cutting fluids is very much necessary. This is very, very important, that it is possible to reduce nearly to 20 to 30% of the heat that is generated by the application of cutting fluids. The cutting forces can also be reduced by using suitable cutting lubricants. By using certain lubricants also it is possible to reduce the amount of cutting force, so thereby it is possible to reduce the amount of heat generated at the tool chip and the work interface. So let us go to the exact definition as you are going to see on the screen now. Cutting fluid is a fluid that is mainly used to remove the heat produced during the metal cutting and other machining processes. Just we have discussed, the main purpose of using cutting fluid itself is to take away the heat generated. So there is a pumping system is there, and by using the pumping system, okay, in a machine tool what happens, there is a continuous flow of cutting fluid in the cutting zone, and again it will return back after filtration, again it goes back to the sump, and again it's getting cooled and recirculated. This is a continuous process, especially in case of automatic machines. It is also used as a lubricant in some cases, because lubricant means what? As good as which can give a very a correct amount of a cooling action at the at the cutting tool and chip interface. They are also used for improving the cutting condition and also the tool life, definitely, as we have discussed. So more and more heat generated at the tool chip interface, so more chances of the cutting tool losing its cutting ability in the machining process. Cutting fluids reduce the friction between the tool and the chip and between the tool and the workpiece. It is going to reduce the both. It is going to reduce the friction between the tool and the chip as well as between the tool and the workpiece. Both it is going to help. If the right amount of cutting fluid is applied, heat can be removed as soon as it's generated. If the right amount means what? Whatever the amount of cutting fluid need to flow in the cutting zone has to be controlled properly so that it is possible to take out the heat generated. So cutting fluid is necessary for increasing production efficiency. This is very, very important. In order to improve the production efficiency, it is important that we require to use the cutting fluids. So let us have a discussion. What are the advantages of using cutting fluids? The first one is increase tool life by cooling the cutting edge. Just I'm explained about this. The main intention, if we go on using the cutting tool for continuous resharpening, because how we have defined the tool life is the time interval between the sequential resharpenings. Okay, so in such a condition, it is necessary that the life of the tool life can be increased, because you are going to give the cooling action with the help of flow of a cutting fluid, thereby protecting the cutting edge of the cutting tool and making it to work for a longer period of time during machining process. Decrease the tool chip friction by providing a lubricant between the chip and tool. That means it is going to act like a lubricant, because you already seen in case of bearings also, the best example is the bearings. In a bearing, what happens? The shaft is made to rotate continuously. Okay, but what happens? It will not get heated because of the lubrication of the bearings. Similarly, here also it is going to act like a lubricant. Provide better finish on the workpiece. Definitely it's going to provide better finish, because we are going to protect the cutting edge of the cutting tool, thereby reducing the amount of heat generated. Reduce forces on the tool and hence economize in power consumption. It also reduces the forces and it economizes in power consumption. Means what? Because more amount of heat, what happens? The more power consumption, like that, because of loss of cutting ability of the cutting tool. Cool workpiece to maintain its dimensional accuracy by reducing or eliminating distortion caused by heat generation. See, generally what happens, if at all the cooling action is not given in the cutting zone, then the heat will be absorbed even by the workpiece. Thereby, even there is every chance that the properties of the work material can also be changed because of high heat generated. Decrease the tendency to form built-up edge. This I already told. So built-up edge is a false edge that is created on the cutting edge of a cutting tool due to continuous machining or cutting operation. So this can be decreased because we are going to provide the continuous flow of a cutting fluid. Flash away chips. This is one more major advantage. That means whenever the cutting action is going to take place, okay, while studying about the different types of chips, so always the metal chips which are being cut during the cutting action, they have got a tendency either to stick to the workpiece or to stick to the cutting edge of the cutting tool. So if at all the cutting fluid is there, it will flush away and it will make the cutting chips to fall down in a tray, especially which you are going to see in your regular lathe machines or CNC machines or whatever is there. Lubricate guiding portions of tooling such as a drill or pilot in a bush. So it is also going to act like a lubricant. Okay, discourage corrosion of newly machined surfaces. Even by using the cutting fluids, it can also reduce to some extent the corrosion of the material. Lubricate machine movements. So this is one of the most important thing, that it is also going to, wherever there is two parts being rotated or two parts in contact, we can go for the cutting fluids which can minimize the heat, thereby going to act like a lubricant itself. So these are some of the major advantages of what? Cutting fluids. The next one, functions of cutting fluids. They are all just similar, just with one or the other combination of words you should be able to write properly in the examinations. Okay, so the first one coming up is to heat dissipation. What is the main function? To dissipate the heat. To dissipate the heat means what? To take away the heat generated at the cutting zone, to dissipate the heat generated during machining. Very simple thing. To cool the workpiece, the very purpose or the function of using cutting fluids is to cool the workpiece by carrying away the heat generated. To cool the tool, to cool the cutting tool by cooling cutting zone. It also continuous flow of the cutting fluids make the tool not to get more heated. To reduce friction and wear, definitely it's also going to reduce the friction and wear of the tool using lubricants. To reduce forces and energy consumption, it reduces the power consumption in cutting the material by reducing the wear, because as we are going to use the cutting fluid, definitely there is a reduction of heat and thereby it's going to reduce the wear also. To improve the tool life by dissipating the heat properly. To improve the surface finish by carrying away the heat from the work material, because the work material will get a very good amount of the required amount of surface finish if at all it is not overheated. To flush away the chips, this is also one of the important functions, keeping the cutting zone free from the hot chips, also to cause chips break down into small parts. Because of the continuous flow of the cutting fluid, what happens? The metal chips will not have a tendency to stick to either to the cutting tool or to the workpiece. It will start breaking up as the cutting due to the continuous flow of a cutting fluid, so that it can flush away the chips. To protect the machine surface from environmental corrosion, this is also very, very important. So as the machining process is continued, this cutting fluid is also going to act like a corrosion resistant property. Corrosion inhibitors like sodium nitrate or trinolamine is added in the cutting fluids to prevent corrosion of the machine surfaces. We are going to use these sodium nitrate in order to reduce the corrosion, or in order to improve the resistance to corrosion of the machined surfaces of the workpiece. So these are about some of the important functions or the purpose of the cutting fluids. The next important part that we need to understand is how best the properties are used so as to see that the cutting fluid is going to give its useful function when it is used as a lubricant in the cutting zone. That we are discussing. The selection of the cutting fluid type is very important. It has a direct effect on the tool life, because just we have discussed it has got a direct effect on tool life. Tool life can be improved, production can be improved, and cost. Definitely the production is more, the cost of production becomes less. So indirectly it is going to increase the efficiency of the plant. The selection of cutting fluid varies with the different machining process and conditions. So depending upon the type of machining operation, depending upon what type of machine is there, all these things are taken into decision to use a particular type of cutting fluid. However, it is desirable to cutting fluid have certain properties. So even then also, though there is a proper type of cutting fluid to be selected based on the cutting conditions, it is necessary to study some of the properties of the cutting fluids. The common properties are low surface tension and low coefficient of friction. It ensures a free flow of fluid. If the low surface tension means what? It has to move freely. It should not again stick more to either to the workpiece or to the cutting tool whenever that cutting fluid is used. Cutting fluid should have excellent lubricating properties. High lubricity fluids are helpful in low speed machining such as thread cutting. In thread cutting, what happens? We are always going to reduce the speed. So in that condition, we require to use a high lubricating properties cutting fluids. And gear cutting, it prevents adhering of the chips on the tool and hence the formation of a built-up edge. That means this is one of the basic property that we expect from the cutting fluid, that is low surface tension and low coefficient of friction. The next second one is chemically stable. This is one of the required property of any cutting fluid. It should not start itself boiling, or it should not start giving a bad odor, or even it should not start any fumes, because as it is sent in a cutting zone itself. It should be chemically stable. That means even it should not react with the workpiece. In other words, we can say it should not react with the workpiece. It should be chemically stable even in extreme conditions, that is high temperature and pressure. Even if there is a high temperature and pressure is there in the cutting zone where the machining operation is being carried out, in that condition also it should be chemically stable. Chemically stable means what? That cutting fluid composition should be in such a way that it should not react either to the workpiece or to the cutting tool, thereby what? Reducing the cutting efficiency or thereby hampering the machining process. Large specific heat, high heat absorption capacity. This is very, very important. The cutting fluid property should be in such a way that by sending a very small amount of cutting fluid itself, it should be able to absorb more amount of heat. Cutting fluid must help to dissipate the heat generated at cutting zone due to friction between the tool and the work materials. Whatever the friction that is generated in the cutting zone, it has to absorb maximum heat by pumping the minimum amount of cutting fluid. Non-corrosive and rust resistant. This is also one of the most important properties. It should not be subjected to any corrosive. It should be means cutting fluid itself should have a resistance to corrosion. It should not chemically affect the work piece and the tool materials. Okay, stain or rust. Example, the cutting fluid that contains sulfur additive should not use with nickel based alloys. There are some conditions where the sulfur additive should not be used whenever we are going to machine the nickel based alloys. So like this, it is important to use a proper type of cutting fluid so as to avoid the corrosive and rusting. Visibility, it is better to use transparent fluid in cutting operation. This is very, very important because generally the cutting fluid used, okay, should be transparent so that it is possible to view how the machining process is being carried out by the operator at every moment of time. Clear fluid allows the complete vision of the cutting action. That is what I have told. As far as possible, if the cutting fluid is transparent, it is possible to see what is happening in the cutting zone. The sixth property is it should be non-toxic and odorless. Yes, this is very, very important. It should not produce any toxic fumes because whenever we are going to use the cutting fluid, the main function of the cutting fluid is to absorb the heat. So when it starts absorbing the heat, it should not have the property of giving fumes which are harmful to the operator. Okay, when it comes in contact with the hot surface, even the small amount of toxic gas has a significant effect on operator's health. It may cause nausea or vomiting. If the fumes up to certain density are produced, it must be odorless. It should not give any odor as it is getting what? Heated. Okay, according to the engineering, the odors play a major role in the mood of the person. Okay, the most important thing that you need to understand is it should be non-toxic and it should be odorless because otherwise it is going to affect the operator. Less evaporative and stability means long life. It should be less evaporative. That means it should not evaporate very fast. Means in other words, we can say it should not have a very small boiling point. It should have a high boiling point like that. Cutting fluids that dry very fast is not economical. It causes frequent maintenance and downtime of the machine increases. Smaller molecular size, it helps rapid penetration of the fluid. Whatever the molecular size of the fluid is there, it should be a very small one so that it is going to help the penetration of fluid. Means what? It can go into the required zone of the where the cutting action is going to take place. Non-inflammable, it should not burn. Non-inflammable means what? It should not be subjected to any burning. It must possess, for that purpose, it must possess high flash point that reduces the risk of fire. It should not catch fire while it is going to cool the cutting tool and the workpiece. High thermal conductivity. Adequate cooling increases the tool life and surface finish. Even it should have the property of conducting the heat. Means it should have high thermal conductivity without getting heated very fast because that will increase the tool life as well as it is also going to improve the surface finish. chemically neutral and harmless to the machine and operator, definitely. And last one is low viscosity. This is very, very important. The low viscosity helps the rapid settling of chip and dirt. See what happens if the viscosity is more, it should have a tendency to the stick. So sticking nature will increase if the viscosity is more. If the viscosity is less, what happens? It will allow the metal chips to fall down very easily in a tray when it is made to flow on in the cutting zone during the machining process. So these are some of the desirable properties that we expect from any type of cutting fluid. The next one coming up is the types of cutting fluids. Okay, so in types of cutting fluids, you can have air blast or compressed air only. You can have water, cutting oils or straight oils you can have, and emulsified oils or soluble oils. Okay, chemical fluids or synthetic fluids, semi-synthetic or semi-chemical fluids, solid or semi-solid lubricant, cryogenic cutting fluid, like this. But before I proceed, I will be giving you I will be telling about the importance of this. The cutting fluids may be classified as first solid cutting fluid, liquid cutting fluid, and gaseous cutting fluid. In solid cutting fluids, you can have graphite, molybdenum disulfide, you can have stick waxes, you can have bar soaps, you can have tail in conjunction with the fatty oil and sulfur. Okay, and liquid cutting fluids, water can also be considered, straight oil, soluble oil is there, chemical additive oil is there, chlorinated cutting oils is there, sulfurized cutting oils is there. All these are coming under liquid cutting fluids. And gaseous cutting fluids, air. So air may be either still or compressed, carbon dioxide is there, argon is there. So these are some of the most important types of cutting fluids which are commonly used depending upon the type of machine, the condition of the machine, and the situation of the machining process, means where the machining operation is being carried out. So now we are coming to the last section of cutting fluid, that is application of cutting fluids, because this is going to play a major role. Because what type of operation, what type of cutting fluids are preferably used, that is very, very important. As you are going to see, we are going to start with the turning operation. First, we are going to start with the turning operation. In turning operation, you are going to see we are going to use the mineral oil. Okay, mineral oil, which is coming under liquid cutting fluid with 10% soluble oil. Both are mixed and it can be used. For the milling operation, soluble oil with 96% of mineral oil. And for sawing operation, which you are going to use in the sawing cutting operation by saw blades, soluble oil can be used. In drilling and boring, soluble oil 75 to 90% of water and mineral oil, both are combined here. Tapping and threading. Tapping means internal thread cutting, threading means external thread cutting. When that operation is done, then we can go for the selection of soluble oils and mineral fatty oils can be used. Gear cutting and shaping, we can directly go for the mineral oils. Broaching operation, active type of oil, lard oil or castor oil. And grinding and lapping operations, you can go for emulsion of soluble oil, mineral oils, solid lubricants in the form of paste also we can use. And the last one, reaming operation, which is known as a fine finishing. Okay, internal. Okay, it is in that we can go for the usage of soluble oils. So you need to just know what type of cutting fluids are used for what type of operation. That is very, very important. So I think that completes the today's session, and along with this I have also attached the important video which you are supposed to see till the last moment, and you have to give for every class you require to give the answers for the assessment questions. Only 5 questions will be there. Everybody has to try for the same. And in the meantime, we are going to finish. I wanted to tell you that we have finished the chapter number 1, that is theory of metal cutting. Theory of metal cutting we have completed. Okay, starting from introduction, that is types of machine tools, to the lastly to the applications of cutting fluids. So just download all the notes from the Anthropic app, or you can open and see in the mobile itself. Just write down the questions, very very important. Okay, write down the questions. So whatever the questions are there which are supposed to write, even I am going to send in a your WhatsApp group also. You can just see the questions. You should be able to write the answers for all these questions in the first IA also. And in the meantime, one more information. So as we are finishing the chapters one by one, it is necessary to bring you awareness that you please tell your parents to pay the tuition fees of the second term. So this is as per the information given by the management. So you require to pay minimum of 5,000 rupees, okay, through online, either Google Pay or Phone Pay or your NEFT or by net banking, whatever the facility is there. Please tell your parents. So soon, in 1 or 2 days, okay, the different staff members will be allotted to follow up the same. Okay, with this I am going to conclude the today's session. And also you require to download all the notes from the app, and every student has to attend every class. Okay, your attendance will be sent to the DTE board every day. Try to understand this very seriously. Okay, if your friends are not still, some of your known friends, we are seeing in the app that more than 10-15 students are remaining absent for each class, and if this is continued, we are also helpless. Okay, so for that purpose, please tell your friends, okay, to attend the online classes. Note down the whatever the notes we have put in the app so as to write every day. Okay, so after this we are going to start with the next session. Okay, next chapter, that is in connection with the different types of machine tools. And the first important type of machine tool that we are going to discuss is about the lathe and operations. Because in this semester you are also going to do the jobs on lathe itself. More number of jobs you are going to do directly in the machine shop on a lathe itself. So that we are going to discuss in detail with the construction, working, all those things in the coming presentations. With this I finish off. Thank you.
नमस्कार दोस्तों, क्वालिटी ऑफ इंडिया के इस प्रोग्राम में मैं आर्यन विश्वकर्मा आप लोग का बहुत बहुत स्वागत करता हूं। दोस्तों, इस प्रोग्राम में हम डिफरेंट टाइप्स ऑफ कटिंग फ्लूइड्स जो कि टिपिकली मशीनिंग ऑपरेशन में हम इस्तेमाल करते हैं, हम उसके बारे में जानेंगे। दोस्तों, मेटल कटिंग प्रोसेस में हम डिफरेंट तरह के कटिंग फ्लूइड्स का इस्तेमाल करते हैं और इनके जो इंपॉर्टेंट प्रॉपर्टीज और फंक्शन जो होते हैं जिनके वजह से हम इनको इस्तेमाल करते हैं, इसके लिए हमने अलग से एक वीडियो बनाया हुआ है और मॉड्यूल जो है अवेलेबल है, आप उसको YouTube में चेक कर सकते हैं। तो यहाँ पर हम जानेंगे कि कितने तरह के कटिंग फ्लूइड्स का हम इस्तेमाल करते हैं मेटल कटिंग प्रोसेस में। तो दोस्तों, अगर हम लोग ब्रॉड लेवल में कैटेगराइज करें तो टिपिकली 4 तरह के कटिंग फ्लूइड्स का हम इस्तेमाल करते हैं मेटल कटिंग प्रोसेस में, जो कि हो जाएंगे लिक्विड्स, सेमी सॉलिड्स, गैसियस और एरोजोल। आइए जरा इन सारे टाइप्स को हम एक एक करके समझते हैं। तो दोस्तों, पहला जो हमारा टाइप हो गया वो हो गया लिक्विड। तो जहां तक लिक्विड कटिंग फ्लूइड्स की हम बात करते हैं तो लिक्विड कटिंग फ्लूइड्स को हम फर्दर 3 कैटेगरी में और डिवाइड कर सकते हैं। इसमें आते हैं मिनरल टाइप, सेमी सिंथेटिक टाइप और सिंथेटिक टाइप। तो इसमें जो सेमी सिंथेटिक और सिंथेटिक टाइप के जो कटिंग फ्लूइड्स होते हैं, ये बेसिकली कटिंग फ्लूइड्स होते हैं जो कि 2 प्रॉपर्टीज को कंबाइन करते हैं, यानी कि इसमें हम ऑयल और वाटर का दोनों के बेस्ट प्रॉपर्टी को हम कंबाइन करने की कोशिश करते हैं। तो अगर हम इन प्रॉपर्टीज की अगर बात करते हैं तो इसमें मेन प्रॉपर्टीज क्या हो जाएगी? मेन प्रॉपर्टी हो जाएगी रस्ट प्रिवेंशन, और इसके अलावा जो वाटर होती है उसके हार्डनेस के प्रति रेजिस्टेंस से भी एक इंपॉर्टेंट प्रॉपर्टी होती है, जिसमें कि पीएच स्टेबिलिटी करीबन 9 से 10 के आसपास को मेंटेन करना एक इंपॉर्टेंट प्रॉपर्टी होता है। इसके अलावा एबिलिटी टू वर्क विद मेटल और रेजिस्टेंस टू थर्मल ब्रेकडाउन और इन्वायरमेंटल फ्रेंडली होना बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट प्रॉपर्टी होता है। दोस्तों, जैसे कि हम जानते हैं कि वाटर जो होता है इसकी काफी अच्छी प्रॉपर्टी होती है, ये गुड कंडक्टर ऑफ हीट है, लेकिन इसे कुछ ड्रॉबैक्स भी हैं। जैसे कि बहुत जल्दी बॉयल कर जाता है, और इसके अलावा मटेरियल को रस्टी होने के चांसेस में बने रहते हैं, और लुब्रिकेशन की जो लेवल की रिक्वायरमेंट रहती है उस लेवल की लुब्रिकेशन वाटर से नहीं मिलती है। इसलिए बहुत जरूरी होता है कि जब हम वाटर का इस्तेमाल कर रहे हो एज ए कटिंग फ्लूइड के तौर पे, तो उसमें हम दूसरे तरह के ऑयल्स या दूसरे तरह के हम केमिकल्स का हम कॉम्बिनेशन करते ताकि हम प्रॉपर्टी को इन्हांस कर पाए। दूसरा हमारा जो टाइप हो गया दोस्तों, ये हो गया सेमी सॉलिड कटिंग फ्लूइड। तो सेमी सॉलिड कटिंग फ्लूइड दोस्तों ये बेसिकली एक तरह के जेल या पेस्ट के तौर पर इस्तेमाल किए जाते हैं, और इसका जो एप्लीकेशन होता है, हमारे काफ़ी सारे ऑपरेशंस होते हैं जैसे कि ड्रिलिंग हो गया, बोरिंग हो गया या टैपिंग ऑपरेशन हो गया। इसमें हम लोग इस तरह के सेमी सॉलिड कटिंग फ्लूइड का इस्तेमाल करते हैं क्योंकि लिक्विड कटिंग फ्लूइड का यहाँ पर इस्तेमाल करना थोड़ा मुश्किल होता है। हालांकि जो सेमी सॉलिड कटिंग फ्लूइड होता है ये थोड़ा सा कॉस्टली होता है कंपेयर टू लिक्विड, लेकिन इसका एप्लीकेशन भी थोड़ा सा कम होता है, और एक्सपेंसिव तो होता ही है लेकिन इसका एप्लीकेशन काफ़ी कम होता है, इसलिए खपत काफ़ी कम होती है इसकी, और इसमें कंटिन्यूस अप्लाई करने की जरूरत नहीं पड़ती है। दोस्तों हमारा थर्ड जो टाइप हो गया कटिंग फ्लूइड का, ये हो गया गैसियस। और जब हम गैसियस कटिंग फ्लूइड की अगर बात करते हैं दोस्तों, तो इसमें कंप्रेस्ड एयर जो होता है सबसे बेस्ट माना जाता है और सबसे चीपेस्ट माना जाता है, क्योंकि यहाँ पर हम एटमॉस्फेरिक एयर का डायरेक्टली इस्तेमाल करते हैं एज ए कटिंग फ्लूइड। और काफी बार क्या होता है, हम कंप्रेस्ड एयर के साथ में किसी तरह के लिक्विड का भी हम इस्तेमाल करते हैं जो कि एक तरह का मिस्ट या फॉग क्रिएट करता है, और इससे हमारा कटिंग फ्लूइड का काम बनता है। अब एक कंप्रेस्ड एयर का इस्तेमाल करने से क्या होता है, जो ऑपरेशन के दौरान, जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल अगर हम ड्रिलिंग कर रहे हैं तो उसके दौरान में जो चिप्स निकलती है तो चिप्स को ब्लो अवे करके हटा देता है, यानी कि वो क्लियर हो जाते हैं। और इसके अलावा जो एयर होता है इसका गुड थर्मल कंडक्टिविटी होती है। और हमारा जो फोर्थ टाइप ऑफ कटिंग फ्लूइड हो गया दोस्तों, ये हो गया एरोजोल्स। और आपने एरोजोल देखे होंगे, काफी तरह के हम स्प्रे का इस्तेमाल करते हैं, घरों में भी इस्तेमाल करते हैं, जिसमें कि कंप्रेस्ड एयर और कुछ लिक्विड का मिक्सचर रहता है। तो उसी तरह का जो मिक्सचर जो होता है मेटल कटिंग ऑपरेशन के दौरान भी इस्तेमाल किया जाता है, जिसमें कि स्मॉल ड्रॉपलेट्स ऑफ किसी लिक्विड का हम इस्तेमाल करते हैं और वो कटिंग फ्लूइड के तौर पे काम करता है। इसका इस्तेमाल हम लोग वहां करते हैं जहां पर सिर्फ कटिंग फ्लूइड का इस्तेमाल करना पॉसिबल नहीं होता है। हालांकि यहाँ पर एक नेगेटिव पॉइंट ये होता है कि जब हम एरोजोल का इस्तेमाल कर रहे हो एज ए कटिंग फ्लूइड, अब चूंकि ये मिस्ट के तौर पर इस्तेमाल होता है तो ये एटमॉस्फेयर में ये उड़ता रहता है, और जो ऑपरेटर वहां पर काम कर रहा हो उसके हेल्थ के लिए एडवर्स इफेक्ट डाल सकता है। तो इसके लिए प्रॉपर सेफ्टी और प्रॉपर वेंटिलेशन की जरूरत पड़ती है जहां पर हम एरोजोल को एज ए कटिंग फ्लूइड हम इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं। तो दोस्तों ये चार तरह के ब्रॉड लेवल में कटिंग फ्लूइड्स हो गए जो कि हमने देखा, यानी कि लिक्विड, सेमी लिक्विड्स और गैसियस और एरोजोल्स। तो मैं आशा करता हूं दोस्तों इस मॉड्यूल से आपको कुछ सीखने के लिए मिला होगा। तो दोस्तों अगर आपने वीडियो को पसंद किया तो इसे लाइक करना ना भूलें, और इसका लिंक अपने दोस्तों और कलीग के साथ में जरूर शेयर करें ताकि उनको भी कुछ सीखने का और हमसे जुड़ने का मौका मिले। और हाँ दोस्तों, अपने कैरियर को नई ऊंचाई में लेके जाने के लिए हमारे ऑनलाइन ट्रेनिंग कम सर्टिफिकेशन प्रोग्राम का बेनिफिट जरूर उठाएं। आप हमारे वेबसाइट www.qualityhubindia.com को विजिट कर सकते हैं और वहां पर हमारे कोर्सेज को आप चेक कर सकते हैं, बाय कर सकते हैं। आपको अगर मेरे द्वारा लिखी गई किताब को अगर बाय करना है तो आप हमारे वेबसाइट में जाके पब्लिकेशन सेक्शन में जाके आप वहां पर हमारे बुक को आप चेक कर सकते हैं और वहां पर बाय कर सकते हैं। लिंक आपको मिल जाएगा। आप अगर चाहें तो डायरेक्टली हमारा पोर्टल जो है courses.qualityhubindia.com, आप वहां पर विजिट कर सकते हैं और वहां पर जाके आप हमारे कोर्सेज को बाय कर सकते हैं। और दोस्तों अगर आप किसी तरह का कंसल्टेंसी चाहते हैं जो हमसे पर्टेनिंग है, चाहे सिस्टम इंप्लीमेंटेशन करना हो, लीन मैन्युफैक्चरिंग